All right, so if I go to File and New, I can also go into the Conceptual Mass Editor. So I'll get that out. And you see, it looks quite different. It has this gray background, and it has this drawing area here. And it has these reference planes. And so again, it has these two major ones that are pinned in place, and this is your insertion point right here. And then it has a ground plane, and it has a different, a kind of similar set of commands, but a slightly different. When I first started using Revit, it was terribly confusing because it seemed like I would pick a command and the whole menus would change. Just remember, there are those three editors: project editor, family editor, conceptual mass editor. And realize they're each different. All right, so the conceptual massing, very much like the family editor. There's some other interesting commands here. One that is different but extremely useful. If I click on this plane and hold the control key down, I can drag it and make another plane. So it's just a fast, easy way to make multiple planes. And it even works with this plane. So I can make multiple planes. Now, similar to the reference plane, the family editor, you want to draw with reference planes. I'm going to break that rule some and be kind of fast and furious with how I draw things. But so we can start with the Create tool, and you'll notice that the family editor had extrusion and revolve and sweep and all that. The conceptual mass editor does not have that range of tools. However, it can create all those things. It has a rather weird attitude of draw it first and it will figure out what you're trying to do. And we can watch that. So if I go to this rectangle tool and, again, now one is I can draw in 3D, which is real nice. And the family editor is not quite so easy at drawing in 3D. But I can draw this, and then I can click these edges again. I have to tap. Yeah. So I could lock these. So they're controlled by the reference planes. Now notice the subtle thing. I click on the reference plane first because that's what I'm locking to. I could click on this one first, but if I click on the reference plane moved. Maybe that doesn't matter to you, but maybe it does. But the concept should generally be that you want to draw the reference plane and lock the lines to the reference plane. So I locked them. That rectangle moves around. I could put parameters on these. You'll notice the scale is totally different. It looks like it's not locked anymore, but it is. I accidentally moved it down slightly. Not a big deal. All right, now if I click on this element, so if I have one closed loop and I click on Create Form, it'll create an extrusion. So it figures, oh, he must be trying to create an extrusion. Now, if I draw a simple line, and create form, I created a plane. It's not the right plane because it actually, I think, created it on this working plane. I wanted to create on the bottom working plane. Okay, it gets complicated in 3D space to control what plane you're working on. So you've got to be very aware of what plane is your working plane. If I use the set tool, I can tell it which plane to use. So I could say, use that as my tool. If I pick show, it gives a color to that one. So now if I draw a line, I'm drawing on that plane. And if I create form, it looks a little bit more like I expected, as extruded up from that ground plane. Okay, so extrusions are pretty straightforward. I draw the shape of it. Revit kind of calls that a profile. And then I pick the create form tool and make an extrusion. Let's do it again. I'm going to do a circle over here like that. And I'll click on it and create form. I got a cylinder. Now you'll notice it's got these handles on it, and I can pick on that and upwards one and make it taller or make it shorter. Now a little subtlety here is I can lock the profiles. What that means is that there is an upper profile and a lower profile. And by locking them, I lock them together. So this will always be a straight-sided orthogonal cylinder. If I don't lock them together, I can actually move that top profile over and it becomes skewed. So, because we often want these straight-sided extrusions, there's a lock tool for doing that. I can still click on this. If I click on the top edge, the top face, so each solid has various faces, and it has edges, and it has points, vertices. So I have a face here, and I can move that face, and that stretches it up. Now this one I did not lock, so I can be a little more aggressive how I use it. I can click on the edge of it so this one I can click on an edge, and if I hover over that, okay, now it's finding the surface. Click on the surface, or it's telling me it's found the edge. If I click the tab key, it will cycle through the different things it could find. Find the form element, finds the surface, finds surface. It actually found the outer surface over there on the back side. And if I go to a point, I can find a vertex. Now I can edit all those things. So I can start deforming this shape very rapidly by picking edges and surfaces and moving them around. Okay, so that's a quick exposure to selecting the different elements of a form. So surfaces, vertices, edges. And then the notion of locking a form, locking the profiles so that it remains a straight extrusion. You'll notice that there's a positive, when they're locked, there's a positive offset and a negative offset. So I put in a clear number, and you see there's even a dimension over here. I could edit it that way too. Now, when I create something in this conceptual massing and create these masses, the masses can either be solids or they can be voids. And if I make something a solid and I want it to be a void, I can change it into a void by clicking over here and just say, make it a void. Now I have a void subtracted from this other solid. Okay. Now let's make some other shapes here. So if I activate this as my drawing surface, and I could draw a box over here like that, and then activate this as a drawing surface and draw another box. Now this time I'm drawing this box on top of the other one. See? And if I click both of these by control clicking, selected them both, and I can create a form. And it created, you know, the form, the blend between those two objects. So, you know, you can do much more complicated blends. So let's take an ellipse and go up to another level and put a rectangle. And then pick those two, create form, and I got this weird thing that deforms from an ellipse to a rectangle. Now that was just two elements, or, you know, a top profile and a bottom profile. But you can also have intermediate profiles. So, so I'm going to click on my bottom drawing area, and I'll draw something over here, and I'll go up one level, and draw a circle, and go up another level, and draw an ellipse. Oops. And go up another level and do another rectangle. Now, you know, this is kind of risky. I may have drawn something that cannot be created in 3D. That sometimes happens. Looks kind of okay. So I'll pick these four shapes, create a form. All right. Created something pretty weird. So a very odd form. But it's all kind of logical to it. All right, now the next one is a little bit more complicated still. So how should I do this? I'm going to draw a spline through points. This is a really powerful tool here. And I'm going to draw this spline sort of a gentle reverse curve. Let's look at it. So that's up on that top level. And I could pick that one control point and I could push it down. So now it's not on the top level. So we're starting to turn in three-dimensional space. And I want to draw a profile now to sweep along this path. And I have to do that by drawing it on a plane perpendicular to the path. So I'm going to pick, spin this a little bit. And I'm going to pick set and pick this object. And you see it found a reference plane on that object. And it happens to be perpendicular to the path. So I could move over here to see it a little bit better. And then I could draw a profile on that plane. And then pick these two objects. And Revit says, oh, you want to make a sweep along a path. Okay, so it made a sweep along a path. Now, I could get more weird, undo that, and I could get a reference plane right here and draw a rectangle on that and pick these three. Hopefully it will do something. Made a blended sweep. It just didn't go full length. But it's a rectangle on one end and a circle on the other. It blends between them. Now, another one I should show you is a surface of revolution. So if I were to take, let's say, yeah. So if I would activate this as my drawing plane, and I could draw a axis of revolution here. And then I could use my spline tool and draw, a shape like that. If I pick these two objects and create a form, and I get, a revolved surface. Now, all of these curved surfaces have two halves. So if I don't want both halves, I can get rid of one of them. No, there's a way to do it, but I'm not going to bother right now. Um, okay, and then remembering that these can be solids or voids. Now this one is not a solid or a void. It's merely a surface. And so just being aware that it could also just be a surface. Um, okay, sweep along path, surface of revolution. Now, all of these have kind of absolutely crazy tools for manipulating them. So I can pick this form, and if I go to X-ray view, I can see all the points that created the form. And so it kind of makes it sometimes more easy to manipulate them. And then I can turn those off. But this is a more interesting one, probably. I click this one and X-ray it. I see the various points that were used to create it. I even have that full length back here, so I can probably do another. Well, maybe not. But anyway, I've got these control points and I can move them around too. Now you'll see the icons turned yellow or orange instead of red, green, and blue. The red, green, and blue means it's Z, up, X, and Y. Okay, the yellow ones mean that they are in the coordinate system of that object. So, so they're orthogonal to each other, but they're not up and down. So you see I can move these around and deform this shape more that way. I wonder if I can get that. Pick that plane. Not gonna let me pick that. Now another thing that I can do is that it has this notion of edges and profiles. So this is a profile up here, and this is another profile down at the bottom. I could pick the whole thing and add another profile. Add two more profiles, maybe. And then if I X-ray it, I can see those other profiles. So I've just given myself more control points. And I can click on these control points and drag them around. Sometimes I drag them into places that won't create an object. So I can reshape this object very quickly. Now, in addition to adding a profile, I can add an edge. So an edge, is on one of these faces, exterior faces. An edge can only be in that direction. There we go. And of course, these vertices are also editable. So, just seeing that we can rapidly deform one of these shapes into something much more complicated. So the way I get those is I can click on the object. I use Tab key to select the entire form. I can turn X-ray on and off. I can add edges and add profiles. I cannot add another profile on top of a profile. I cannot add an edge on top of a profile. I can add them. I can add edges or profiles along the extruded or swept dimension. Now another thing I can do is I can dissolve it, and that deletes all the surfaces and leaves the profiles and the extrusion path, or the control points of the extrusion path. So if I really wanted to edit it, well, in some cases I would want to edit it like that, and then go back and create a new form based on that. This is a full-blown solid model. So what I mean by that is that it responds to the Boolean operation of subtraction. So get that, create a void, pull that void across here. And I missed it, of course. Now it's intersecting that object. Sometimes it'll simply make the void immediately. Sometimes I've got to go through a cut. But that solid object can be eroded away. Now, if I keep pressing the Tab key, I can get back to that void object. And I could, for instance, X-ray the void object and pull around its vertices. And the subtraction has just changed. And I can even pick one of these surfaces and deform the surface. So if you like those crazy arbitrary shapes, you can make them. So and I think there is there are times when they're really beautiful. So don't be afraid of them. Now, every one of these points that I've put into this model can be controlled with parameters. And this is quite challenging, but it's also pretty routine, if that makes any sense. It's challenging because I've drawn probably, I don't know, 70 control points here. And each control point has an X, Y, and Z location in space. So if I wanted to control all those parameters of all those control points, it would take 210 parameters. And, you know, that's a lot of parameters. It's pretty slow to kind of create all those parameters, but you can do it. And I have seen students who create extremely elaborate parametric models by defining all of those points. So now the models can be quite tough to look at because basically you're creating a reference plane, 3 reference planes. Well, not necessarily. 2 reference planes for each point. And so there'll be a lot of reference planes there. Now this gets to the notion that it's a good idea to name your reference planes. So these have been automatically named. Some of them have not been named. So name of 3 is not very discerning, not very descriptive. Center, front, back, 2. But I can name my reference planes to be a little more descriptive. All right, now you may be wondering, okay, I mean, this looks like fun to create all these weird and strange shapes, but how do they become a building? And I can load this into my project file because the project file is where we turn things into buildings. And these are kind of the regulating surfaces of the building. So beyond Le Corbusier writing about regulating lines, we now have various datum elements. So a point element, a edge element, a surface element, a solid element. So points, lines, surfaces, solids. You know, to see how they can be used then is if I go to my architecture menu and pick wall by face, you know, I can put a wall on that crazy vase thing. And, you know, if I wanted to be so perverse as to make it a brick wall, I could probably do that. Lots of bricks on it. And if I wanted to put a window into it, I could even put a window into that strange curved shape. Cut a hole through it and put a window in. So this wall by face command is immensely powerful. And I can create a roof by face too. I always forget the last step of this is to click create roof. But now I have roof objects on them all. And likewise floor objects, I could create floor objects on them. Now I'm going to draw a bunch of levels up. And I can click this object and I can create mass floors on each level. And it created all of these floor objects at each level. So I can start to turn that into an interpretation of a high rise or a tower. Now, the last thing I want to show you before we take a break is I can pick that object. I can go back to Edit Family. I can edit these things. And I can load it back in the project. And you'll notice that the walls are not updated. However, I can update them. So I can change my massing model and then change the update all my walls and roofs and so on. So if I were to make that massing thing parametric, I could load it in my project. I could add the walls and roofs and floors and windows and doors. And then I could change the parameters and update all those things. And in just a moment, I have created another design. And that's where the power really starts to happen, is that you think very carefully about your regulating lines, your surfaces, your solids and voids, and make them respond to the context of the urban setting, of the topography, of the climate, of the solar angles, of the people's needs, of your formal system of axes and alignments and forms. Add all your walls and roofs and floors, windows, doors, and then you can update those parameters and get a new scheme. So if you look at it and say, gee, I like that skewed wall, but I don't think it's skewed enough. Type in a parameter, it's skewed more. Look at it, yeah, that does look better. And the crazy thing with Revit is you can have all the drawings of scheme 1 over here and set up in your sheets. And when you update it, all the drawings for the new scheme are already done. And so you can be producing this high quality presentation of all of your alternative schemes as you go through the project. It utterly blows up the old-fashioned way of designing, where you try to develop a good concept and then you elaborate that concept, through lots of hard work and lots of drawing. And then at the end of the semester, you start your presentation phase where you present the work. You create a presentation with all the sheets and views and documentation and graphics, and you present it before a jury, and the jury says, "You've done a wonderful job of presenting this." unfortunately, your concept wasn't good. Or what I found when I was in school, the prof would come around 2 days, 3 days before the project had to be turned in and say, I think you should move this wall over here and change the column grid spacing. And the only response you can say is, thank you for your input. But you can't do anything about it because it's too late. Crazy thing with Revit, you can change it right up to the last minute. And so it changes your entire way of thinking about your design. Your design is so easy to change, so easy to update and get all of the plans, the sections, the perspectives, all of that done within a few hours. And then the reviewer can look at it again and say, I'm sorry, my idea was dumb. It came out bad. Just go back to the other one. Yours was better. And you can revert back. So I think the real takeaway I want you to get from this whole class is that with this parametric modeling, you can explore scheme design a whole lot longer than you did in the past. And the more schemes, the more variations you explore to greater depth, with good simulations and good analysis, the better your design is going to be. Let's take a break.
How long are you thinking?